We asked liberal elites. Well, yeah, why not, dude? We'll play it, because I'm always bashing right-leaning people, so let's bash left-leaning people. Why not? Have a little bit of balance for our New Year's.
I'm Ami Horowitz, and I'm here in Berkeley, California to find out if voter ID laws suppress the black vote.
We can spend a day talking about this. I'll admit I've only ever read like little bits and pieces. I've never gone in depth. But I'm pretty sure that when they crafted some of these laws for voter ID, and somebody in chat could correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm only parroting what I've read in like comments. I haven't like read actual studies or articles yet. Like I've read that like when they went to craft some of these voter ID laws, they literally looked at like they literally went through and found out how most black people were voting and went to craft the laws in such a way that it would like hurt them the most. Was that actually true? Does anybody have a source, like a non-bullshit source, to say if that's actually true or not? Because I've read that multiple times, that assertion, but I've never seen like an article like detailing it. Like, it's not just like it just happened to hurt like a lot of black people in some areas, but like in some areas it was like actually targeted like black people and how they went to craft these laws.
Do you have an opinion on voter ID laws?
Yeah, they're usually pretty racist and they're bad.
I think voter ID laws are a way to perpetuate racism.
Would you go as far as say those laws are racist?
For sure.
Do you think it suppresses the African American vote?
Definitely.
Tell us how.
Because they're less likely to have state IDs.
Frontline article.
Minority voters are less likely to have the kinds of IDs that have been described or required.
These type of people don't live in areas with easy access to DMVs or other places where they can get identification.
You can always get IDs.
Do you just dislike the current type of voter ID laws, or do you think there should be no voter ID laws? Okay, let me do this for a quick second, okay? Because, okay, when we talk, we have to consider two different things always, okay? And I've said this a million times in the past, okay? We have to, I always say that like you have to consider the world as you would like it to be and the world as it is, right? Or another way to view that coin, or another side of the same coin is, right? We can talk about conceptually how we would like things to be, but we have to look at the reality of the situation, okay? So sometimes, if a certain reality is presented to you, it makes the concept part very easy, okay? But if that reality is flawed, then the concept will be flawed. So I can give you a few examples of this, okay? That sounded like a bunch of mumbo jumbo, but let me give you a few examples, okay? So here is an assertion, okay? Assertion. A lot of people on welfare take the welfare money and then they just blow it all on drugs, okay? So now the concept, somebody asks, do you think that mandatory drug testing should be in place for people that are on welfare? Well, a fuck ton of people on welfare take all their money and they blow it on drugs. So yeah, of course, right? That's a totally valid, logical position to take. And a rational person, I would expect, would take that position, that those people should be drug tested. Well, what actually happens in every state where they do this, right? They end up spending a fuck ton of money drug testing every single person on welfare, and it turns out that the percentages of people that are abusing drugs are in the very, very low single digits, and the states always ended up wasting more money on drug testing than they ever saved by excluding some people from the programs. Because what the reality was, there weren't very many of these people that took all of their money on welfare and went and spent it on drugs. That reality just didn't exist. That was fabricated by people pushing certain narratives that wanted to push you into an area where you would conceptually be okay with forcing drug testing on people on welfare, right? So that's like one example of like where the reality will inform your decision, but if the reality is misinterpreted or misrepresented, that you're going to have a totally different idea, right? Another example is when you talk about voter ID laws, right? Well, the assertion is voter fraud is rampant in the United States. Tons of illegal immigrants and people vote twice and for dead people and all this stuff. It's a rampant thing, right? Therefore, that's the reality, right? And the concept of voter ID laws, becomes apparent. You're almost begging the question, like, yeah, obviously we need voter ID laws because there's so many people fraudulently voting. Like, we have to have voter ID laws. If it ends up being racist or whatever, I mean, boo-hoo, right? You have to have the voter ID laws. But the reality is, right? The reality is no one has ever done a study to prove that there's ever been voter fraud ever. And people have tried. Nobody has ever been able to find all this massive amount of voter fraud. It'll get brought up every now and then in a Breitbart article, in a Federalist Papers article, on some extremist blog post, blog shitter, maybe Paul Joseph Watson or whatever will tweet about it. maybe Trump himself will fucking tweet about it, but you've never seen this happen, right? Well, so now you have to back up and you have to go, well, is disenfranchising a whole bunch of minority voters a good thing to do to try to prevent a problem that doesn't exist? Probably not, right? So that's my stance on voter ID. Conceptually, if voter fraud was rampant, that's a false equivalency. That's absolutely not. If you want to hop on TeamSpeak, we can talk about it, okay? Karati Dartary? I don't know how the fuck to pronounce the name. If you want to hop on TeamSpeak, you can do it, right? But that's my stance on voter ID, right? If there were studies done and there was proof that there was a like rampant voter fraud and shit, and it was actually a serious problem, then yeah, sure, then let's do voter ID laws. But it doesn't look like that's the case, and it's never been the case. So what about voter ID laws do you find racist? Could you give a few examples? So these are comments I've read, okay? I can't discuss this at length or in depth, okay? But the way that this has been presented to me in comments in the past, I haven't even read news articles on it. I guess we can spend a while reading on it if you want. But the way that it's been presented to me is that there are states that will go through black voter registration and try to intentionally find the types of laws that they would pass that would disenfranchise the majority of black voters. So rather than doing things to optimize the security of the election process, they're just trying to find the laws that would hurt the most amount of black people by picking types of ID or whatever, or types of registrations that black people would not be able to get to, right? Regardless of whether it helps the integrity of the election or not, right? That's what I've heard. Now, I don't know if that's actually true or not, but I do know, one thing I do know that's true is that there hasn't been rampant voter fraud proven anywhere in the United States. I've never read an article on that, and that would be headlining article shit if that actually happened. I've never read anything like that, so I know that that's not true. So that kind of leads me to believe that there's a lot of racial motivation for the voter ID law stuff.
For the internet, does that also make it difficult for black people in particular?
You're arguing the way it's restricted, you're having some kind of ID to vote? Maybe, depending on what kind of ID you're required to have, sure. Let's say, for instance, I'm not sure. I don't know the types of different ID available. I can give you examples, but they would only be hypotheticals, and they may or may not even hold up in reality, so I'm not sure. That sounds like some conspiracy theory shit. Well, that was George. Don't bait me, dude.
Yeah, you have to have access to the internet. You have to be able to pay an internet service provider for certain fees.
Do you think that's harder for black people to go online?
Well, I feel like they don't have the knowledge of how it works.
A lot of people have smartphones, but you might not have data.
For most of the communities, they don't really know what is out there just because they're not aware or they're not informed.
I also think there's a repression of black voting with how if you're a convicted felon, you're not allowed to vote and everything. And when you look at swing states like Florida, that's a huge population of the African Americans.
Now I'm here in East Harlem to ask black people their thoughts on what you just heard. Do you have ID normally? You carry ID around?
Yes, I have state ID.
Do you carry ID?
Yes, I do.
Do you know any black person who doesn't carry ID?
No. Everyone that I know has an ID. Why would they think we don't have ID?
That's a lie. Why would they say that?
Do you have ID?
Yes.
Because I have my ID and my friends have their ID, so we know what we need to carry around.
Everybody.
Okay. This is hardcore selection bias, right? This guy is walking around, it looks like, to the nicest neighborhoods. He's asking fucking students. He's asking people in the streets, looking at their fucking cell phones with, their nice outfits and their done-up hair and their huge fucking glasses and shit. These people all look like these are pretty well-off, black
their
people,
thought?
right? I feel like the selection bias here is pretty bad, but...
That I know have ID. That's one of the things.
I mean, if I go and ask all the black people on my campus at UNO, if black people in the United States are just as well off as white people, I'm pretty sure that most of the black people there, or depending on how you phrase the question, right?
You need to walk around with New York with an ID.
Do you know any black adult who does not have ID?
No, I don't.
Is it a weird thing to even say that?
Yes, it is.
What is this? Some type of trick candy camera?
I know, right?
That's the only thing I brought with me.
Those are legit IDs. I heard a lot also that black people can't figure out how to get to the DMV.
Really?
What does that say to you?
I know it's on 25th Street.
Do you know where the DMV is around you?
It's on 125th Street.
Listen, even Kanye says black people can't get to the voting booths, but oh shit, what's the lyric? I fucked up. I should have known this. Can't make it to the ballots to choose leadership, but we can make it to Jacob and to the dealership. See, man, this is fucking... Do you think these people even know who Kanye West is?
Then 3rd Avenue, I believe.
You know how to get there?
Yeah.
Do you have a problem getting there if you have to get there?
No.
I know these sound like silly questions. You know how to get to the DMV?
Of course.
You know where it is?
Yes.
You can get there?
Uh-huh.
No problem.
No problem.
Just checking.
Okay.
And I also heard a lot that black people, especially poor black people, have no access to the internet, can't figure out how to use the internet.
That's just stupidity, honestly. Everybody has access to the internet. Even a little kid can figure out.
What kind of a fucking stupid question is that? What kind of a fucking retard says some shit like that? Everybody has access. Everybody knows how to use the internet. Come on, dude. Really? Look at this fucking kid.
How to work the internet.
I had access to the internet for years.
You know how to use it properly, right?
Exactly. I do it at work. So, of course, I know how to use it. My kids know how to use it. They all have iPads, iPhones.
It's only selection bias when you disagree with it? What? That's not true at all. I only view these videos to laugh at them. I have never, if somebody's asked me for like proof of something or whatever, like, do you think that this is, I will never link you a video going, well, look, this proves my point. This one guy ran around and asked 5 people. Are you retarded?
That's whatever.
Your phone has data? Mm-hmm. You can access the internet
Unlimited.
Unlimited data.
Mm-hmm. I use my phone as a hotspot.
What does that say to you for the people who have this perception of black people?
They're pretty much ignorant. That's what my thought process on.
I just think that's ignorant. Ignorant.
Ignorant. That's the word I'm hearing a lot.
Ignorant.
Ignorant.
It's very, very ignorant.
Does it sound racist for somebody to say that?
I think it is a little racist because, you're putting people in a category and you have no idea what you're talking about.
Maybe a little bit of racist in it, but like I said, I think it's more stupidity and ignorance.
Judging somebody, like, but you judging them because they black, saying that they don't got it.
What people are they talking to? Who are these people talking to?
Do you have a problem that if you go to vote and they say, can we please see your ID to make sure you are who you say you are? Are you cool?
Love showing my ID.
You got no problem with that?
Nope.
Would you have a problem if when you go to vote, if they say, can we please just see your ID to make sure you are who you say you are? Do you have an issue with that?
No.
Would you have a problem if there was a rule where you have to show your ID in order to vote?
I don't think so. No.
Would you have an issue if there was a rule saying you got to show your ID before you vote?
Nah.
Are you cool with that?
Yeah.
Voter ID laws target minorities in rural areas of southern states, not in downtown New York City. Oh, shit. You should interview some people and make some parody of it. Yeah. Nah, it's all good memes. Ami Howowitz? Would you be in favor of voter ID so long as it is easy to access the required ID? The problem is that if there's no voter fraud happening, why take the extra step? I don't understand. Why make laws about voter fraud in the first place? What are you talking about? We still have to, when you go to vote, don't they still check your address and everything to make sure you tell them where you live and who you are and everything? Okay, we'll read this real fast and then we'll back to League. This isn't too long. A federal appeals court panel struck down North Carolina's voter ID law on Friday, overturning what's considered the broadest piece of restrictive voting legislation passed in recent years. This is the second voter ID law to be overturned in as many weeks, while another was weakened. A separate federal appeals court struck down Texas's last Wednesday, ruling that it discriminated against Black and Latino voters by presenting an undue burden to accessing the ballot. A day earlier, a federal judge curbed Wisconsin's voter ID law, allowing voters who don't have identification to cast a ballot if they swear to their identity. North Carolina's bill extended beyond requiring a state-issued photo ID at the polls. North Carolina's bill extended beyond requiring a state-issued photo ID at the polls. The law cut early voting days and banned same-day voter registration, eliminating straight-ticket voting, which allows voters to choose all candidates from a single party by checking one box, and introduced more restrictions on casting provisional ballots. It prohibited pre-registrations for 16 and 17-year-olds who previously were allowed to indicate their intent to vote when applying for a driver's license. The law also allowed for more poll watchers and made it easier to challenge voters or their ballots. On Friday, a 3-judge panel in the United States Court of Appeals in Richmond, Virginia, found that the law not only had discriminatory effect, but that lawmakers did so on purpose. Ooh. discrimination with almost surgical precision. In North Carolina, African Americans vote overwhelmingly for Democrats. They came out to vote in record numbers in 2008 and 2012 for President Barack Obama and helped to turn a traditionally Republican-leaning state into a swing state. North Carolina went to Obama in 2008 and was narrowly won by Mitt Romney in 2012. In 2013, in Shelby v. Holder, the U.S. Supreme Court overturned a section of the Voting Rights Act that required North Carolina and other states with a history of voter discrimination to submit any voting law changes to the federal government for approval. A day after the Shelby decision, Republican lawmakers in North Carolina announced plans for an election law that, the Federal Appeals Court has since found, restricted voting and registration in several ways, all of which disproportionately affected African Americans. The court said that in crafting the law, the Republican-controlled General Assembly requested and received data on voters' use of various voting practices by race. It found that African American voters in North Carolina are more likely to vote early, use same-day voter registration, and straight-ticket voting. They were also disproportionately less likely to have an ID, more likely to cast a provisional ballot and take advantage of pre-registration. Then, the court said, lawmakers restricted all of these voting options and further narrowed the list of acceptable voter IDs. With race data in hand, the legislature amended the bill to exclude many of the alternative photo IDs used by African Americans. As amended, the bill retained only the kinds of IDs that white North Carolinians were more likely to possess. The state offered little justification for the law, the court said. Those who defended the law said that they were doing so to prevent voter fraud. Although the new provisions target African Americans with almost surgical precision, they constitute inapt remedies for the problems assertedly justifying them and, in fact, impose cures for problems that did not exist, the court said. Hey, it's almost like what I said earlier. It added, we can only conclude that the North Carolina General Assembly enacted the challenged provisions of the law with discriminatory intent. Although it struck down the law, the court stopped short of recommending that North Carolina be pulled back under the Voting Rights Act's pre-clearance requirement. What the panel lays out is just the plainest reading of what transpired here, which is that the legislature sought to target African American voters to further entrench themselves in the legislature, said Chris Brooks, the legal director of North Carolina's American Civil Liberties Union. That is the chronology of what transpired here. That's the only reasonable interpretation of what transpired here. The North Carolina Attorney General's office didn't immediately comment on the ruling. With 3 months until Election Day, the state could still seek a hearing from the full appeals court or the U.S. Supreme Court, although that's less likely since it currently only has 8 justices. For now, North Carolina's election law no longer stands. Oh, fuck this shit. Was this like a court transcript? Jesus Christ. In this one statute, the North Carolina legislature imposed a number of voting restrictions. The law required in-person voters to show certain photo IDs beginning in 2016, which African Americans disproportionately lacked, and eliminated or reduced registration and voting access tools that African Americans disproportionately used. This is kind of bad, right? Can most of us agree that this is kind of bad? That this looks kind of bad, that you would collect data based on race and then start legislating shit that disproportionately impact, like, you understand how it looks bad? Even if you don't maybe agree with me, you understand how, like, a reasonable person could look at this and think that, like, okay, well, this is kind of fucked. This data show that African Americans disproportionately... Moreover, as the district court found, prior to the enactment of SL 2013-381, the legislature requested and received racial data as to the usage of the practices changed by the proposed law. This data show that African Americans disproportionately lacked the most common kind of photo ID, those issued by the DMV. The pre-Shelby County version of SL 2013-381 provided that all government-issued IDs, even many that had been expired, would satisfy the requirement as an alternative to DMV-issued photo IDs. After Shelby County, with race data in hand, the legislature amended the bill to exclude many of the alternative photo IDs used by African Americans. So these are even government-issued photo IDs that wouldn't be accepted because they were commonly used by African Americans. The district court found that prior to the enactment of SL 2013-381, legislatures also requested data as to the racial breakdown of early voting usage. Why would you be requesting this data? Why would you ask for this data? This seems so absurdly inappropriate. In particular, African Americans disproportionately used the first 7 days of early voting. After receipt of this racial data, the General Assembly amended the bill to eliminate the first week of early voting. What the fuck? Shortening the total early voting period from 17 to 10 days. Why? What? I'm glad we looked this up now. Holy shit, because I was kind of on the fence just thinking it was kind of shitty before. This is actually fucking scumbag territory. The racial data let me back and read this paragraph. The racial data provided to the legislatures revealed that African Americans disproportionately used early voting in both 2008 and 2012. Trial evidence showed that 60.36% and 64% of African Americans voted early in 2008 and 2012, respectively, compared to 44.47% and 49.39% of whites. In particular, African Americans disproportionately used the first 7 days of early voting. After receipt of this racial data, the General Assembly amended the bill to eliminate the first week of early voting, shortening the total early voting period from 17 to 10 days. As a result, SL 2013-381 also eliminated one of two Souls to the Polls Sundays in which African American churches provided transportation to voters. Can you relink this court document? Yeah, I think I pulled this document out of the Frontline article. You should never be making laws except under, I guess, so I'm speaking as an American now because I don't know how it works in other countries. I don't mean that condescendingly. I legitimately don't understand. But in America, typically, you never really want to make laws that keep people from voting. That's not how you want to win elections, by preventing people from voting, right? You always want as many people voting as possible. Okay, because I'm talking to Kira. I'm pretty sure you're a Trumple in chat. Okay, I'm going to be very calm when I respond to you. Destiny, what I never understood about the voter ID debate, and basically all of the discrimination arguments like it, is that almost everything ever discriminates towards some group. At what point does something count as something, as a problem for disproportionately affecting a group? It seems arbitrary as fuck. Okay, let me tell you what's going on here, okay? Let me tell you what's going on here, okay? First, they rolled back a law. The Supreme Court rolled back a law that North Carolina had to go to the Supreme Court to seek approval for updating their voter registration memes, right? The next day, the Republican legislature said that they were going to change the way that voting registration works, right?
Male. They didn't go far enough. Pepe.
Nice. Okay. So then what the legislature does is they request a whole bunch of racial data on how voting works, and then they enact legislation that very specifically, hyper-specifically targets a political party, okay? And they don't do this for the benefit of the process at all, right? Do you understand? Why would it be bad to use alternative forms of government-issued photo ID? Was there some evidence that some of these were being plagiarized? There's not. Why would you make it so that you cut down the pre-early voting time from 17 days to 10? Was there evidence that a lot of people were using these first 7 days to illegally vote? There's not, right? You can only walk through so many of these things where you have to wonder, well, what's going on here, right? Do you understand? Why are you even requesting racial breakdown of voting? That seems very strange to me. Do these laws actually work? I'm curious to see how the black vote got affected by the legislation. Well, it's hard to say. Black people came out in record numbers for Obama, both elections, so. Destiny, it just came to mind because you hated the arbitrary nature of pro-life arguments. I'm not talking about the specific racism that may have occurred in voter ID laws. Okay, but that's what we're talking about right now, right? Okay, well, hey, I'm glad we looked this up today. Thanks. So now I can be against these even more, and I can feel even relatively informed about it. Nice. Oof, I'll have to bring that up when I argue with Lauren. Dude, what's up? I love you. Did you know that?
Well, look, dude. Okay, here's the thing.
Whoa,
right?
whoa.
Oh my God. Sorry.
Let's calm down. Listen, it's a new year. It's 2017, okay?
Okay, no, listen.
This is the year of love, dude. I love you. I want you to know that I love you, and I'm not even going to shout or scream or anything. I love you, okay?
Thanks, dude.
Okay.
Sorry.
So
Am I loud?
No. So we're just having a conversation between friends, okay?
Yeah, dude.
All right. So, what is your main grievance on Twitter? Let's summarize it in a couple sentences. What do you think?
Oh, about the voter ID?
Yeah.
Well, okay, so I'll be honest, all right?
Okay.
I don't know, I am biased, okay? And I don't know too much on how it suppresses specifically the black vote or even minority voters. All right? Because when you talk about the Supreme Court, I'm not. Have they actually given out a ruling on voter laws?
On some of them, yeah.
Okay, because from my understanding, it seems like it's just a state by state basis.
Yeah,
And,
but that's kind of how it goes. They've struck down some states' voting laws, right? Okay, hey, let's back up. Let's back up a little bit more than that, though. Even okay. So
sure.
If somebody made, let's say that somebody made a general law. Okay, we'll even say it's a federal law, and this general law was, if you wanted to go to the polls to vote, you have to show some form of identification, any form of state-issued identification, right? Do you think that that's an okay piece of legislation?
Well, if it were, say, a driver's license or even
any state issued, I'm not trying to trick you. Just any state issued. I'm not trying to like do like a gotcha, right? But any state issued ID, right?
I think that is fair. Yeah.
Okay. I don't necessarily like it, but I think that it's a tenable position. Okay. So the problem with a lot of voter ID laws in the United States, and I'll speak specifically to North Carolina, because that's the one that I'm the most familiar with, and it's the one that caught some of the most flack, was what the legislators did is, or the legislators, what they did was they requested specific racial data about how people voted. And then they made custom crafted laws that were specifically targeting these groups. So let me give you specific examples. So minority voters were more likely to vote during the first 7 days of early voting, of early ballot voting in North Carolina. So what they did was they restricted early voting from 17 days before the election to 10 days before the election, right? This sounds like the kind of restriction that doesn't do anything to make the election safer. It just does it to target certain groups of people, right? Another example of a law was they found the IDs that were most likely to be held by minority voters, and they made those IDs, in some cases, state-issued IDs, ineligible to be used at voting booths, right? And all of these different types of laws, all of the types of provisional ballots they banned, all of the type of strictness, they got rid of the ability to single-line vote for parties. All of these things were done, and all of these things, to quote some of the articles being written, surgically targeted minority voters in the way that they were passed, right? When you hear about something like that, and I'm not trying to get you whatever, right? But this kind of stuff sounds a little bit more insidious than just saying you need an ID to vote, right?
Yeah, it's definitely malicious.
Yeah, so that's the problem with some of the voter ID laws, is that it seems like people try to present it as having a very good idea, like, oh, we need to keep the election safer. But what is restricting the number of early days, like the early voting days, do to make it safer? It sounds like there's a different kind of thing at play here, right? And when the legislature in North Carolina is Republican and the state is slowly turning blue, and then they start making these laws that target minority groups from voting, it makes you think that there might be something else going on. This is one of the cases that the Supreme Court ruled on, where they struck down these voter laws as unconstitutional, voter ID laws as unconstitutional, right?
Yeah, that totally makes sense, yeah.
So in backing up a little bit more than that, typically I think that, okay, so, and again, I'm just talking. I'm not going to pull a like, oh, I got you with a fucking thing, right? I'm just talking, right? I think that in general, I think that as a member of any country, I think usually what you want is to get more people voting, right? Usually you don't want to restrict voting unless it's absolutely necessary. You typically want as many people voting as possible, right? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean,
not like illegal immigrants or anything, but like,
well, you know, that there's things to be said about voter participation too.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so typically anything that increases voter participation is probably a good thing, right? You generally want more people voting.
Well, I mean, for instance, like take, you know, our most recent presidential election. Okay, we had just barely above 50%. So, I mean, when you talk about like, completely unrestricting voter ID laws and going at an angle saying that it's going to somehow increase voter participation, it's kind of hard to buy, because a lot of Americans are just apathetic.
Sure, it's not about increasing voter participation, because the norm would be to not have these voter ID laws in a lot of states. It's more about trying to decrease it. I think in general, you don't want to make legislation that decreases it unless you have a really good reason to do so, right? So like again, in general, I think
Okay,
even
yeah.
so,
Okay,
I'm
sure.
not saying that getting rid of these laws is going to boost voter participation, but in general, you probably want more people voting, right? Right? Usually for a democracy, you want as many people voting as possible, right? So the problem, the primary problem. So earlier, when I said I would have a little bit of a problem even with the general ID requirements, the problem I have with this type of legislation is that it seems like you are legislating for a problem that I don't think exists. Have you seen? Okay, so here I'm going to be a little bit more specific. Have you ever seen any kind of study or any kind of meta-analysis that points to widespread voter fraud in the United States? Personally, I have never heard of that or seen anybody credible mention that before.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, no one's credible.
Yeah. So doesn't it seem kind of strange to start making laws to combat a problem that probably doesn't exist when that law has a detrimental effect on voter turnout?
Well, I would. Okay. I would still say, at the bare minimum, an identification is necessary just to at least. Yeah, I am going to say at least prevent voter fraud, but
I guess
since
I
really...
understand. So, like, I understand the feeling of what you're saying, right? I understand that.
Yeah.
When if you have the idea that anybody can just walk in and anybody can go and vote and dead people vote and all this crazy stuff is happening, right? In that type of scenario, and stating rules that make it so that you have to show an ID to vote, I think would be a good idea, right? But it seems to me that when you take a step back and you look, it doesn't seem like these are problems that occur anywhere in the United States. So it seems strange to start making laws or restrictions that will reduce the number of people voting. It might not be by a significant amount, but it does reduce the amount of people voting. It just seems weird to start legislating for problems that don't exist yet, right? It would.
Yeah. Hold on.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So, yeah, I think you're taking a bit too far. I mean, like, do you live in North Carolina or
no?
Okay, but yeah, I mean, what? Yeah. So when you brought up that case, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely malicious, and it targets certain groups. That is the whole idea behind it.
Uh-huh.
And oh crap, I keep zoning out.
No, that's okay.
I'm freaking going wreckful.
What does he always say? What does he always say when he's
spacing out?
Yeah. Okay.
It's 1:30 here.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, I just think you're taking it a step too far, saying voter ID laws inherently decrease voter participation.
Well, if you put any kind of roadblock up, like let's say there are a million people.
It's not even necessarily a roadblock because.
Well, but it kind of is. I mean, by definition, right? Like.
Well, what do you mean? I mean, is it really that hard to go to your state department and get a little slip of paper?
Is it that hard? I mean, it depends on your position. It's not that hard. I don't think it is. But inevitably, there will be some people that aren't able to do it for whatever reason, right? I'm not saying that there's going to be like 50% of minorities are unable to get a certain type of ID. I'm just saying
it's not even that. It's not even that. I mean, if they can't even go to their state department, how are they even going to go to the voting booth? Because these aren't located at your home.
Sure. But I mean, it's easier to make one trip to the voting booth than it is to make one trip to the DMV, right? And then another trip to the voting booth? Well, I mean, because one is one trip and one is two trips. I think the one trip is probably easier.
Well, wait, how's it one versus two trips?
Well, you can either go to the voting booth or you can go to the DMV and then after that go to the voting booth.
Oh, okay, I see.
Again, it's just one of those things where it just seems strange to legislate against something that's not a problem. Like if we were experiencing voter fraud, like I would consider that to be a very serious problem, like more serious than any Russian meme or anything else, right? If there was actual like widespread voter fraud going on in the United States, I think that's a problem that definitely should be addressed. And voter ID laws definitely seem like the way to do it. It's just, I guess my problem, I'm using North Carolina as the specific example, but there were two other states that received similar rulings from the Supreme Court, where it always seemed like the motivation for these voter ID laws was a lot more insidious than what they seemed on the surface, that they were literally like laser pinpoint targeting different minority groups, picking the types of IDs that they were most likely to have, and then barring those from being used. Like, it just seemed like it was a lot more malicious, you know? And when you make laws like these, you always kind of open the door for that kind of stuff to happen. Whereas it seems like, why make a law like this at all if it's not really a problem, you know? Like let's say that, like, I don't know, do we need a law to make it so that it's like illegal to play Bop It while you're driving or whatever? Like, is this really a problem that we need to be legislating? Like,
Yeah.
I
get what you're saying.
You probably shouldn't be playing Bop It while you're driving, right? But I mean, like, it doesn't seem like a problem that's worth like actually legislating out to make this like a legal thing. Like, I don't know, it just seems weird. And
okay. So I suppose people who, the reason why voter ID laws are so respected is that, you know, anyone has some sort of identification nowadays, so why not just make it a law so that way you have to vote? I think it's just been so normalized and ingrained in our culture.
Well, but it isn't in a lot of places. Like in my state, in Nebraska, and there are lots of states, you don't need ID to vote. You go, you tell them your address, you make sure that you're in the correct district, they cross your name off, and then you vote.
Well, that is some sort of identification.
Well, no, I don't have to show ID to vote.
Yeah, but you have to tell them where you live. You have to make sure that you're actually a Nebraskan.
Oh yeah, I could be wrong, but I think that's the norm in most places. I don't think that and someone in chat can call me out if I'm wrong on this. I don't think there's any state where you just walk in, check off a box, and throw the ballot in. Like usually you go in and I think you tell them.
Okay. I thought that's what you were arguing for.
Oh no, because that would probably be a little bit more. Because I think in most states, again, someone can tell me wrong. Like in most states, don't you have the ability to track if your vote was counted, right? Because after you vote, they give you like a specific number that references your ballot, and you're able to call in to make sure that it was counted and everything. But
well, I live in Michigan, and you just have to have some sort of, like, whether it's from the State Department or a driver's license, you know, just something that verifies your name in a federal sense.
Sure.
And so, like, what you're saying in Nebraska is totally different from my experience in voting.
Gotcha. But I think that, I don't know, I just seem, again, like, unless this is actually a problem, I don't see why you would want to put up any roadblocks to voting, especially when they probably disproportionately impact some groups over others.
Right, I mean, when you bring up cases like North Carolina, when it's malicious intent, obviously I'm totally against that. But at the bare minimum, you know, and it's obviously state by state, you know, I've never seen an issue with people providing ID in Michigan. You obviously haven't seen an issue with people not providing ID in Nebraska. I think there's definitely a middle ground. I mean, you can't go too extreme in both directions.
Yeah, maybe not. But I guess I just get frustrated sometimes because it seems like the reality that's presented from some of the insanely right-leaning, I don't want to say, like the people that are very staunch about voter ID laws, is that voter fraud is rampant. But it doesn't really seem like voter fraud is an issue that happens that much in the United States. I've never heard any widespread.
Well, I mean, you know? So you know, let's talk about how Clinton won the popular vote. Then, so
yeah, sure.
I mean, I'm totally with you. I mean, I'm just going to say that, you know, from Trump's argument, he thinks that all the illegals, dead people, and whatnot have been voting when you know, if he's not going to provide evidence of that, why should we even listen to it?
Well, I mean, I'm not a Trump supporter, so I don't agree with that statement, with what he said.
Yeah, neither do I.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so, that was a pretty extreme statement that he made. If his statement was true, that's a more extreme charge than anything that Russia would have done, right? If there are millions of people illegally voting in our election, like, that's a very, very, very big charge, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Let me back up. Let's just back to the tweets when you said it.
Well, so my problem with the tweets is that you linked a video where one guy went around and talked to 4 black people in, like,
yeah, it is a little bit what is it, cherry picked?
Yeah, I would say that this is a slightly cherry picked. I have a feeling that if he were to go to certain parts of Chicago or Detroit, he could probably find black people that would have no fucking ID whatsoever and would have no idea where to go to get some. But, like, when he's literally talking to, like, a black college student and, like, a chick with, like, an iPhone and, like, crazy glasses and dyed hair and shit, like, these are people, like, in nice sections of the city where, you know, white people approve parts where they don't look very scary and whatnot. Like, I don't know, I feel like these examples are a little bit cherry picked. Maybe that's just me, but
yeah, I mean, we could go back and forth with it,
Well,
but
yeah, well, if you want to, we can. What do you want to go back and forth on?
I don't know. I could, whether it's just more videos or
Well,
I mean, because
but
it seems a little bit insulting when you say. Because I want to know why you. I want to know
listen.
what.
I'm not the PC patrol, so I will
Yeah,
be very,
totally,
very,
yeah.
very frank. Okay, I'll be very frank. Right, there are issues that disproportionately impact Black people in the United States. Okay, and I'm not shy to say that. I will say that the average Black person in the United States, or not the average, but Black people in general, are going to have a higher chance of not knowing where to get an ID. Are going to be dumber on average than white people in these areas. Right, like I'll say that. I don't have any problem saying that. I guess it makes some people on the left uncomfortable saying it, but like I don't think that you disagree with that statement, do you? Right? Or we can even go like one at a time. Like you understand that Black people are of a higher likelihood to be socioeconomically disadvantaged in the United States, right? Just going by stats on socioeconomic position, right? In general.
Yeah, if we go by
right, yeah, and that
what
people
are
who
the
are
demographics or
socioeconomically disadvantaged are of a higher likelihood to not possess certain forms of state IDs, right? Maybe they take public transportation instead of getting a bus, or instead of having a car. You know, maybe they have a bus pass instead of a vehicle. Maybe maybe they aren't working, or they're out of work, or they're not able to get work, so they don't get these IDs, right? These are all people that are disproportionately in the Black community that are going to have harder times getting these types of identifications, right? I don't think that's an extreme statement to make, right? When you break it down like that, though, it doesn't sound as charged. Like, I understand what the point of this guy's video is, and the reason why this argument works is because a lot of the people on the left are too scared to ever speak frankly. But I mean, I think the statement is true. If somebody says, like, so do you think that in general you think there are more dumb Black people that don't know how to get IDs? Maybe, well, yeah, of course, yeah. That's the whole point of the argument, right? That's why they're disproportionately affected. If every Black person was,
But then should we just deregulate the voter ID because they're too stupid? I mean, if they're too stupid,
it's not about deregulating voter ID. It's just if there is a problem that you need to legislate for, then you identify the problem and then you design legislation for it. Right now, it doesn't seem like there's a problem with illegal voting, so why would you make legislation for it? You know?
Well, if you're saying they're too stupid to even get a voter ID, then maybe they shouldn't even vote in the first place.
Well, but it's not about too stupid to get a voter ID. Sometimes it's not about not having the opportunity to, or not having access to do it, right?
It really isn't that difficult of an opportunity.
But difficult for who? If you've got 2 or 3 kids and you're a single mom and you don't have a job, or maybe you do have a job and it's the only thing you do and you take a bus or whatever, like how often in your day are you going to have the opportunity to go and spend 2 or 3 hours down at the DMV? Like, I understand that maybe that might sound like an extreme example, but like I'm telling you that what is easy
you want to talk about cherry picked.
Well, but the stats kind of back me up. Or why do you think? Well, then tell me, why do you think Black people have trouble getting ID? Because that my argument would be that if you're in socioeconomically disadvantaged positions, you're of a higher likelihood to not know how to procure some sort of state ID. So, but if you don't believe that's true, then you tell me why are Black people able to do it?
Okay. So
well, no, because
maybe...
I want to hear your answer, because you said my answer was bad, that I'm just calling Black people dumb. So I'm curious, why do you think Black people have a harder time getting ID?
I don't think they have a harder time. I think it.
Then why don't they do it?
What do you mean? I think they do it.
Then why do they complain about voter ID laws?
Well, probably because Republicans specifically try to, like you said, essentially require more and more types of identification.
Yeah, but if you said that even Black people can get that ID and all of the Black people know how to get the ID, why would they care if there was more?
At some point, Stephen, it becomes too much.
For just Black people, though?
No, for every American.
Because but then why is it that people protest these on the behalf of minorities and whatnot? More like, you don't see people saying voter ID is unfair to white people, right?
Well, no, that's because like you stated with North Carolina, what was it? The time, like the 7 days or whatever.
Yeah.
That's when Blacks go to vote, and so I forget what you said.
They made it so that it used to be you could vote 17 days before the election.
Oh, 17
and then they
days.
cut it down to 10 days before the election. They cut off 7 days.
Okay. Yeah. Right. So yeah, I think that's wrong. Okay. I just don't see where you're really trying to get at.
Well, my initial point was that this isn't a problem, so why legislate for it? If you think it's not, do you think it's a problem?
I think it should go state by state. I
Well,
really don't see.
You didn't answer my question. Do you think that voter fraud is a problem in some state? Have you seen any evidence of that?
No.
Then why would you make legislation to try to make it so you need a state ID to vote?
Well, I don't think it's to combat voter fraud.
Well, what is it to combat then?
It's not meant to combat anything.
Then why would you have it as a requirement?
Just evidence that you voted.
But you already have that. When you go in, you give them your name, and then you get a ballot. You get like a ballot ID after you vote.
Well, you have to do things before you do that. Like you said, you have to prove that you're a resident.
Well, no, I didn't have to prove anything. You don't prove anything.
Oh, you didn't?
No, you don't show any form of ID. You go in.
You said that.
No, you just go in and you say, "Hey, I'm Stephen Bunnell. This is my address." They look up your address. They cross it off.
Yeah, your address.
Yeah. But I don't show them any document. I don't have to bring like a phone bill or something. Like I just tell them that.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay. So, okay, I was thinking more like they would verify it through some.
Oh no, nothing is verified. That theoretically, I could go and say, "My name is Colin McDermott. I live here." Blah blah blah, and then if I'm in the right district or whatever, they could cross his name off the list or whatever. But I'm just saying that like if voter fraud doesn't occur anywhere, like I don't think in general, I don't think that you'd be in favor of just making laws for the sake of making laws, right?
No, well, it happens more often than not.
What happens more often than not?
Making laws just to make laws.
Well, yeah, but in general, aren't we against that? Or do you think that that's a good idea?
Well, I don't know. It would depend on the issue.
Okay, what if it's an issue that there's no reason to make a law for it?
Well, you're just arguing from the point of voter fraud, though.
Well, well, yeah, but what other reasons would you mandate a state ID for? It's in my experience, and I could be wrong, but in my experience, when people talk about voter ID, usually it's to prevent voter fraud.
I don't know. Personally, when I'm arguing from the most minimum type of regulation possible.
Yeah, but especially, I'm assuming you're right-leaning. Am I right there, or am I incorrect?
No, I'm more of an independent, I guess.
Okay, well, and even as an independent, I assume, don't you want the least amount of regulation possible? Like, why would we make laws just to add more regulation for no reason? I guess I'm just not following you there.
I really have no clue.
Well, that's fine. That's okay. So, because I agree with you, I can't think of any other reasons too, right? Why? So, maybe, I don't know. It just seems like there's no point in having voter ID laws unless there's actually like widespread fraud, right? Like, if fraud were to occur, I would change my mind immediately. So if a report came out saying that, 400,000 people in whatever, some state, all these ballots turned out to be fake, then I'd be like, okay, well, this is fucked up. Like, we need to have some extra form of security in the form of voter ID or something, right? Something has to happen. Like, this isn't going to work, right? And then at that point, then we start legislating to fix the problem. But if there's not a problem and there's nothing to gain from having voter ID other than keeping...
Well, okay. So it's like you said, when you said you could just go in and give a fake name.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so explain a little bit more deeply how that process works.
So when I went in and voted, and I'm sure this is different state by state, but the way that it works in Nebraska, or at least in Omaha, it might be district by district, is I go in and I say, "Hey, I'm Stephen Bunnell," and or you go in and they say, "Okay, what's your last name start with?" And then I said it's a B, so then there was like an A through K section. So I go there and they go, "Okay, what's your last name?" And I say Stephen Bunnell. And it's like, "Okay, what's your address?" And then I gave them my address, and then they looked it up and they said, "Okay, well, this is your stuff. Here's your ballot. You have to write your district number, whatever, at the top, and then you'd write that in your ballot, and then you would throw the ballot in, and then I don't remember how, but somehow they give you a number so that you can call in to make sure that your ballot was counted like a week later, and that's how the voting process went. I never had to show any form of ID or anything like that.
Okay, so that sounds reasonable, but you could just as easily go in and give a fake name too.
Well, if I knew like the name of somebody else that lived in the district, yeah, I could give their name and their
Okay.
address. Yeah, I could do that.
So
yeah.
so it is in a database.
Wait, what?
Because, well, when you give your name, they have to cross you off and verify that you're a resident.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So that. Okay, that does make sense. I guess I'm.
I think like so because I can speak to I think I can speak to the strange things I think that you're thinking right now, right? So there's two things going on. Is one, a lot of people make the voter ID argument from two places. Okay, so the first place is one, they assume that everybody that voter fraud is a widespread problem in the U.S., which it really isn't. And I think if you talk to most people, they'll admit that it probably isn't a widespread problem. There haven't been any big reports on it. And then two, that people will just run into a voting place, run up, grab a ballot, check off a box and throw it in and then run out. And that you can just do that or whatever, right? I think it's a little bit more than that, like.
Okay, that was the one side. What about?
Or I'm just saying like these are two things that maybe everybody doesn't consider. So it leads you to having maybe a different kind of opinion than.
Oh, sorry. Explain this the second thing again.
So if you are under the impression that people will just like run in and throw a vote out, and they don't even have to like say their name or anything, and then they just run out, right? I don't think that's exactly how it happens when you go in to vote.
Oh yeah. Right. Yeah, and I think that's the whole basis behind voter ID.
Well, but that doesn't seem to be the basis in the states where it's been moving forward. It seems like the basis was very racially related, right? That was the problem, it seems.
Yeah. Well, when it's racially motivated, it is definitely an issue. But
if it's not racially motivated, it seems hard to find any other motivations for it because there is no widespread voter fraud. So what other motivations would there be for having a voter ID law?
I don't know. To me, what you're saying with Nebraska, it really seems no different than providing a driver's license, for instance. Because
Well, but I don't need a driver's license or any kind of ID. I just need to go in and say where I live and what my name is.
I know. I'm saying the two are equivalent.
But they're not. One requires me to have an ID that I had to go to some kind of state office for, pay some fee for, get transportation to go there, take time out of my day to go there. Like, these are all things that, depending on your situation, they could be kind of difficult. Depends on how far away you are from the state office. The county treasurer office hours are fucking shit. It's like fucking 9 to 3 or some stupid. Not that bad, but like the hours are often during working hours. You got to get transportation there. You got to sit and wait for a while. You got to pay a fee. You might have to bring someone, right? Like, I'm not now to normal people that work and have 9 to 5s or whatever. Like, this is fine. But the people that are in especially precarious socioeconomic conditions, it could be hard sometimes to make time out of your day to do this kind of stuff, right?
Well, when you make claims like that, I would need to see evidence of a survey.
Wait, evidence of what?
Of it being difficult.
Well, I think the proof is in the pudding. Why would people be upset about these things if everybody just...
No. I think they're more upset about when it goes over the edge and begins to restrict the time you can vote. It's not necessarily about getting an ID or even going to the State Department, but when it's more like preventing voters from actually going to vote, like saying you need to have proof of residency, a driver's license.
Okay, so I don't know if you consider this liberal propaganda. I can find other sources just because I know these things to be true. I mean, I can find other things if you want. But here, I'm sending you a Okay, so I'm sending you a link, okay? This is a PolitiFact link. So these are fact-checking people. But if you think they have extreme liberal bias, I can find you another one, right? So this is Eric Holder, who was...
We'll go for it. The more links, the better.
Yeah, I sent you a link on Twitter. So this is Eric Holder, who I believe was a previous attorney general.
This discussion really makes you think, huh?
Yeah, previous Attorney General of the United States. Okay, pretty well-respected memer. So he says that recent studies indicate that nationally only 8% of white voting-age citizens, but 25% of African-American voting-age citizens lack government-issued photo IDs. So it would seem to me, I don't know why, but it seems like there is something that keeps people from getting these government-issued photo IDs. Not everybody just has one.
Yeah, unless you define the exact contributors, maybe it's felonies or I don't know. I'm not sure if misdemeanors even prevent you from getting an ID.
Well, nothing. Felonies won't prevent you from getting an ID. I don't think you can vote if you're a felon. But
well, I mean, oh well, really? You can get a driver's license if you're a felon.
I'm pretty sure you can, right?
Yes. I don't know. Yeah. I'd have to read the entire thing to know the context of it.
Well, so I mean, so what other figure would you need? You think of the 25% of African Americans that don't have photo IDs or government issued photo IDs, you think that all of them are felons, or?
No, I'm just saying that as maybe a contributor.
Do you think it's a significant contributor?
No, I don't think of that 25% they're felons.
And you can get an ID regardless, even if you're a felon, right? You're able to get an ID, but
right, yeah. Nationwide, the Center's 2006 survey reached telephone 987 U.S. citizens of voting age, asking them questions. You have current unexpired government issue ID with your picture on it, like a driver's license or military ID. As voter ID debates heated up in 2011, Conservative Heritage Foundation issued a critique of the survey, noting that it was still frequently cited and questioning its decision not to vote, not focus on registered or actual voters. According to the survey, 11% of voting age Americans did not have current government issued photo ID. Among African Americans, 25% did not. Where that quote comes from. Not enough Hispanics were surveyed.
Okay, listen, I'm going to even come halfway, okay? I don't need you to denounce all voter ID laws now, but will you at least promise me that there's like a little bit more maybe to look into or whatever before?
Yeah, I certainly do think I've already gone halfway with you even. I've said that when it's done maliciously, it should be prevented.
Gotcha. I think most of it is done pretty maliciously. I think do you agree with that or do you disagree with that? There were two other states that the Supreme Court also shot down when they ruled on North Carolina's voter ID laws. And no state has proven that widespread voter fraud has occurred. So it seems like most of it is to target different groups to prevent them from voting. I think that line of logic is pretty solid.
Yeah, totally. But I mean, so you think just presenting a driver's license is malicious?
I think it can be used to maliciously target people, yeah.
Okay, how so?
Well, because different types of people. Well, one, because you're legislating something to combat a problem that doesn't exist, and two, you're highly disproportionately impacting certain groups of people to combat a problem that doesn't exist. It seems like it can only be malicious in nature, no? Unless you can give me another reason why the voter ID laws would be a good idea.
Yeah. I definitely see what you're saying. I really haven't given it too much thought before.
All right, well, that's okay. All I ask is that you consider both sides, come to an informed decision, and even if we disagree, it's okay.
Yeah, dude.
Okay, well, listen, dude, I love you. Do you have any final shout-outs or any final words you would like to leave
Are you
us with?
streaming?
Yeah, I always stream.
How many people are watching?
Like 20. I didn't stream to very many right now. Or maybe...
Oh, thank fucking Christ.
Okay, I lied a little bit. It was like 1,700, but...
It's not 1,700. Is it really 1,700?
Yeah, but that's okay.
Okay. Are you gonna upload it to YouTube?
Why, do you want me to?
No, not really.
You really don't want me to?
Really, dude.
Oof.
Feels bad, man.
I don't know. But I feel like we were both calm and civil. I feel like we were both...
Well, yeah, but, you know, memer's gonna meme.
Well, if it makes you feel better, a lot of people in my YouTube comment section really don't like me. So, if you really don't want me to upload it, I won't. I understand.
No, it's up to you. I mean, I don't really think I can stop you if you really wanted to.
Well, no, but I'm a nice person.
Yeah, you're a cool guy. Yeah, I'm gonna give this article a read because you know how arguments go when people link things, they love to take stuff out of context. And
do you think I've
taken... Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. I know what you mean.
Not to insult you, but you know, I mean.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and I would encourage you to do so. You shouldn't agree with anything I say just off that. Here, this is one more article. This goes into depth, or I think this one does, about how the quote unquote surgical targeting that is done by the. Oh, I sent it to you on Twitter. Did you get it?
Yeah, I got it. Yeah.
This is a pretty brief article.
Okay, yeah, about North Carolina. Yeah, the one you.
Yeah. And I think if you click through, there's a PDF here that gives the actual court ruling, and it seems really bloated, but if you skip like the first 2 or 3 pages where it just names everybody's fucking name, you can see pretty frankly what they talk about in the in the court case. But yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so I don't know. Maybe when I read more, we can come back to this.
Yeah,
yeah,
sure.
Dude.
All right. Well, hey, I love you, buddy. Be careful. Stay safe.
Yeah. Look. When I had to do this because every time you call people out, they pussy out, and even if I sound retarded, all right, I couldn't back out.
Well, that's okay,
right?
Dude. I don't think you sounded retarded, for what it's worth. Okay.
Well, I mean, you got to give me credit at least.
Yeah, I do. I give you mad props, man. I was happy to come on.
The cojones. All right, man.
Okay, well, have fun. Be careful, buddy.
You too, dude. It's been real.
Yep. Peace out. Look at that, guys. 2017 Destiny. We engaged the feelings. We identified the problem, and then we talked about solutions for the problem. Oh my gosh, how great was that, guys?
Here is another example of ridiculous biased ID voter law. Under Tennessee law, a handgun carry permit can be used as ID when casting a ballot, but a student ID card cannot. Guess which group is more likely to vote Republican and which group doesn't?
Nice.